Welcome in. I don't know if the link is the same as it was before, but let's hope it was because that was crazy. Tried posting live, it did not go. And so this is attempt number 2 at breaking down the ELF. We're going to keep this pretty casual. But what's happening is the European League of Football is in week 1 of its season. And if you don't know about the European League of Football, there's really no other football league like it in the world. So countries from all over Europe competing in this thing, right? And some of your biggest countries don't compete, which is sad. But I mean, you have Switzerland, you have Austria, you have Germany, which has quite a few teams, right? You have Spain, you have France now in this thing. So, some of the largest countries in Europe competing in this thing. It's basically Eurovision, but for football. So I like watching Eurovision, which of course is the Eurovision Song Contest. The countries from all over Europe competing. And of course, I love watching European football, but it's a little hard to get in the United States. That ELF Game Pass is sponsored by DAZN Sports. So if you want to go look at that, that's fine, but it's a little bit expensive. It's like in the hundreds of dollars just to watch some spring league football to tide you over till maybe the NFL gets back or anything else. But luckily, I got you covered here, right? So I'm Matt Sparks. You might know me as Arrowhead First on Threads and also formerly on Twitter, but I don't go on Twitter too much except to post links to my live videos telling them to leave Twitter and go somewhere else, which is here on YouTube. So, and for the European League of Football Week 1, we have had an exciting week so far. And if you don't really know too much about it or how the European League of Football functions, there's going to be a lot of blowouts, but there's also going to be a lot of really close games. And there's basically 3 tiers for the European League of Football. There's the elite teams, just like any league. There's your middle-of-the-road teams that are still really powerful, rely a lot on the run game. And then there's your bottom-tier teams who you can expect to lose on any given weekend. So let's go forward. Let's look at this. All right. So we are starting off 2020 with the 2025 European League of Football season. Of course, we're going to break this down for you. We have, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. As I said, we're going to keep this really casual, right? We got 16 teams. That's exactly half of what the NFL has, but these are from kind of all over, right? So we got the Farivar Enthroners, the Panthers of Wroclaw, the Prague Lions, and the Vienna Vikings. Those are all in the Eastern Division, while in the Western Division, you have the Cologne Centurions, the Frankfurt Galaxy, the Paris Musketeers, and the Stuttgart Surge. Now, there's been a little redivisioning this year, which is kind of important, right? Because the Rainfire and the Paris Musketeers used to be in the same division. They're not anymore. In the North Division, you have the Berlin Thunder, the Hamburg Sea Devils, the new expansion team, the Nordic Storm, who is taking over for couple of teams that decided they weren't participating this year. One of those being, anyways, it doesn't matter. So, the Barcelona Dragons. So, in the north, you got the Berlin Thunder, the Hamburg Sea Devils. You can see a lot of these are from Germany. The Nordic Storm represent Malmo, Switzerland, Malmo, Sweden, and Copenhagen, Denmark, right? And then you got the Rainfire. And then finally, in the South Division, you got the Helvetic Mercenaries of Switzerland, the Madrid Bravos of Spain, the Munich Ravens of Germany, and the Raiders Tyrol of Innsbruck, Austria. So this is all very exciting stuff. And if you don't know about European time, some of these games start pretty early. So we already got quite a few games in the books, but we do also have games going on right now. So let's recap the action that has already happened. Of course, this is week 1, so everybody started out 0-0. So in our first game, we had the Farivar Enthroners traveling to take on the Wroclaw Panthers, and they lost big time, going 0-1, heading back home 0-1, and the Panthers staying at home 1-0. And They lost 55-12. And this is something you're going to see, and we're going to explain why that is here in a little bit. You're going to see a lot of these big blowouts, but you're also going to see a lot of really close games as well. This is a bit more of a high-scoring league at times than like the NFL or the UFL or something like that. And they get a lot of fan engagement, which we love. So, of course, Roclaw is in Poland, right? So, the Rainfire, the reigning champions, the two-time champions here, 2023 and 2024 champions, they traveled to Paris to take on the Musketeers, and they ended up beating them in a 2-point margin, right? They start off the season at 1-0. The Paris Musketeers start off at 0-1. 17-15 was the score there. The Hamburg Sea Devils traveled to Madrid to take on the Bravos. The Bravos were an expansion team last year, and they came in and immediately made their mark. It was really something. And though they didn't win the final like some people thought they would, right? They made a great showing of it their first year. They're starting the season off with another good showing, 1-0, beating the Hamburg Sea Devils by a score of 13-12. Then we had the Nordic Storm taking on the Helvetic Mercenaries. We had 3 games in the later window there. And so 31-13 was the score there. And I believe all these games have concluded in that middle window there. But 31-13, Nordic Storm taking down the Helvetic Mercenaries. The Cologne Centurions, 63-14, just taking a drubbing in Berlin, facing the Thunder. They're going to start off at 0-1. Thunder going to go to 1-0 after a dominant performance. And that's just more of what we saw from last year with the Berlin Thunder. The Berlin Thunder had a really great offense last year. It looks like it's going to be that way again this year. The Raiders Tirol traveling to Munich to take on the Ravens, and that's 18-7. And I think that one has also concluded. Sorry, my daughter's being goofy back there. That one has also concluded. That's an 11-point margin there. So the Munich Ravens, 20-7. Their ticker has a little trouble updating. The Munich Ravens will start off at 1-0. The Raiders Tirol will go to 0-1. And these are 2 teams that were really in that middle tier that we were talking about last year. Let's head back over and get into some of the games that are going on right now. We got 2 games going on right now. We have the Vienna Vikings, who were the 2022 champions, traveling to Prague to take on the Lions. And we have the Frankfurt Galaxy traveling to the Stuttgart Surge. These should both be in the first quarter. And let's see if we can get a refresh on that. And I'm going to mute this. This is very casual, so And we're back. Like I said, it's going to be really casual here throughout this thing. So oh no, go back. What did you do? Go away. All right. Sorry. There's so many links here. All right. So the Vienna Vikings traveling to Prague to take on the Lions, and it's pretty early. We're into the second quarter now, but pretty early you can see that the Vienna Vikings have a good handle on this thing. They did very well last year. Strong performance, and the Prague Lions really did not. So 14-0 early in the second quarter, right? And let's just kind of look at how this thing has gone down so far. The Vienna Vikings, their quarterback, Ben Holmes, 112 yards and 2 touchdowns already. Their top receiver, Mayer, 64 yards through the air. Torre and Horn both have touchdowns already in this game. So, I mean, just coming out the gate swinging for the Vienna Vikings against the Prague Lions, which is something we probably could have expected, right? As for the Lions, their quarterback Smith, 4 of 7 so far, just 51 yards, and has already taken a sack. While they've had a little trouble getting their rushing game going, averaging about 3 yards per carry between their two running backs. But they do have wide receiver Willie Patterson. And Willie Patterson was one of the stars of the league last year. And so he's averaging 21 yards per catch. So that's a big deal for him. And I just want to real quick point out one of the phenomenons that we see with this league is that in the ELF, there's a lot of like roster turnover, a lot. Last year, we would see a quarterback have a huge day for his team and then get cut and then sign with another team and have a huge day for them. And that former team would sign a new quarterback and he would do well. I mean, it's just there's a lot of roster turnover here, but also you see some of the big names move. And so for the Nordic Storm, who ended up with a big win today, they managed to get two of the best players in the league. Quarterback Jadrian Clark, who's the reigning MVP, played with the Rain Fire last year on their championship run. He's now playing for the expansion team Nordic Storm, as is Glenn Tuwanga. Glenn Tuwanga was one of the best running backs in the league last year, and he goes over to the Nordic Storm as well. So if you're an expansion team, that's really the way you want to start these things out. So a lot of roster turnover here, right? You never know who the quarterback of some of these teams are going to be from week to week. And of course, there's a limit to how many American players you can have on the roster. And they usually reserve those spots for quarterbacks. So we got a close contest over here in Stuttgart as the Frankfurt Galaxy head to the Stuttgart Surge. And this is 6-7 right now. Of course, the Surge had a first quarter touchdown. Frankfurt coming back with 6 points in the second quarter. And Frankfurt was one of those teams last year that didn't perform well in the standings, but it seemed like they were in every game, like right till the end. Very strong team. So let's look at some of the stats here. Riley Hennessy, who was one of the most electric quarterbacks in the league last year. He 6 of 7 so far, 86 yards, no touchdowns, right? But he does have a touchdown on the ground, a goal line touchdown. Pedro is their leading receiver so far, 34 yards. And of course, if Hennessy does not have a passing touchdown, then he does not have a receiving touchdown. For the Frankfurt Galaxy, quarterback McKay, very accurate so far, 6 of 7, 44 yards. So averaging about just under 6.5 yards per attempt there, right? Their running back Platzgummer has 41 yards on the ground so far and a rushing touchdown. That is a formula for success because he is averaging almost 7 yards per carry, right? So you can see Frankfurt might be looking to get it done on the ground today, while Stuttgart Surge with Riley Hennessy are going to be looking to get it done through the air. Let's haven't covered this league in about a year, so we will see what's up. Come on. Sorry, there's a name here that I am not familiar with. No. It's really fine. But just looking at some of these names here that I'm not familiar with, trying to get caught up with those. But anyways, so and Stuttgart Surge quarterback Riley Hennessy just scored again, making it 14-6. This has all the makings of an entertaining game if the Frankfurt Galaxy can keep their rushing attack going, right? If they can't, if that stalls out at any point, the Stuttgart Surge might put this out of hand real fast. All right. So let's go back and see what else we got, right? let's go back. I wanted to look at that Nordic Storm at the Helvetic Mercenaries game. So the Mercenaries really have just had a ton of trouble finding their footing in the ELF. And the Nordic Storm come into their house, put up a 25-point second quarter en route to a 31-13 victory, which doesn't seem that bad on paper, but getting outscored 25-7 in a single quarter is pretty rough, right? And when you look at the box score, it doesn't look much better. Quarterback Adrian Clark, 20 of 30, which isn't so great, but 258 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, just 1 sack taken, while they had 2 guys go over the century mark and rushing. Glenn Tuwanga with 114 yards and a touchdown, 9.5 yards per carry. Whitmer, their second running back, 106 yards, 9.5 yards per carry, and a touchdown. And then, of course, they had Kennedy Channing, their third running back. He only had 44 yards, but he also had a rushing touchdown and was averaging 7.3 yards a carry. On top of that, they had Brandon Beaulieu with 115 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And then they had their pass catcher Botella, who just had 4 catches, but had 2 touchdowns in those 4 catches. And then their second leading receiver was Fons, who was averaging 31 yards per catch with 62 yards and 2 catches, right? That is a dominant performance. So, of course, 5 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. So 8 total touchdowns in one game. That's going to get it done, man. Oh my goodness. Okay, hold the phone. So just a quick disclaimer, the ticker here has trouble updating a lot of times, and so we finally got the updated score here for the Nordic Storm versus the Helvetic Mercenaries, which looks like, okay. So we're officially, this is the official final score, 56-12. It ended up, right? That's normal. Some of the formatting issues on the website here cause this sometime. But the final score, the Nordic Storm go in and absolutely dismantle the Mercenaries, going to 1-0 in their first game as a franchise, going to Switzerland, beating the brakes off of the Mercenaries 56-12. Jadrian Clark, the reigning MVP, showing why he's the reigning MVP. And 50 of these 56 points came in just 2 quarters, the second and the fourth, 2 25-point quarters for the Nordic Storm. All right, let's head back out and let's look at one of these other games. I believe it was this one. No. Sorry, just looking. Rowclaw Panthers, of course, dismantling the Farivar Throners, who were one of the worst teams in the league last year. 6 total touchdowns in that game. Irons with 3 passing touchdowns. Brzezowski with a rushing touchdown and 100 yards. The quarterback Irons with 77 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And then the receiver Stewart, 72 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Ottender, 35 yards and a touchdown, right? So big dismantling there. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with some of these games. Sorry. Oh, here we go. So Berlin Thunder, we already said, taking apart the Cologne Centurions at home, right? So much so that they let their backup quarterback come in and get some work. But Jacob Sullivan, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's no Jadrian Clark, but he's pretty close, right? With an absolutely stellar day through the air. 22 of 24 passing, 413 yards, 17.21 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, no sacks taken. And then they didn't have to get it done on the ground, but they still managed to put up a good performance on the ground. Their leading running back, Adams, was 66 yards and a touchdown. And just looking at the receivers here, their leading receiver, Goggin, with 166 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaging 24 yards per catch, while their next closest receiver, Shum, had about half of that, but still with an excellent day, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, 22 yards per catch. And then Schumann coming in with 55 yards and averaging about 27.5 yards per catch. I mean, just an absolute field day for the Berlin Thunder offense here, Lake. What more could you ask for as a coach? Let's look at some of the stats from this 2-point victory for the Rain Fire. Not a high-scoring affair like some of these are, right? So the Rain Fire with new quarterback Jeffries, he got off to an okay start, right? About 10 yards per completion, 13 of 22 passing, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, a sack taken, but was fairly effective on the ground, averaging 6.2 yards per rush, or 62 yards and a touchdown. They really had trouble getting it going through the air against a stout Paris Musketeers defense. And then the Paris Musketeers, their quarterback, Henderson, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 180 yards through the air. And then they were a little more effective on the ground, but ultimately it didn't translate to the scoreboard. This game neck and neck the whole way. Basically, So a 4-point differential in the first quarter and a 1-point differential in the fourth quarter, right, is what ended up winning it for them because they didn't score at all in the third. So, just as close a game as you can ask for, but the Paris Musketeers start out 0-1 compared to the Rain Fire, the reigning champions, starting out at 1-0. But if you're the Rain Fire, you're the champions, you have the target on your back. You got to get a better performance than this out of your players going forward. Now, don't get me wrong. Paris was a semifinalist last year. They're a very stout team, but you're the Rain Fire. You're supposed to be winning convincing victories and scoring high. And that's going to be a question in people's minds after you lost one of the best probably the best quarterback in the league, Jadrian Clark, and probably the best running back in the league, Glenn Tawanga. Are you still going to be able to maintain that offensive performance under head coach Jim Tomsula, the 2-time coach of the San Francisco 49ers? So we'll see how that goes going forwards. I just want to check something real quick. Sorry, just looking. Oh, okay. Now what's going on here? Okay. So, I was curious, and of course we said there's a lot of roster turnover. The reason that we were going through those stats for the Paris Musketeers, and we didn't see Zach Edwards' name there. Zach Edwards kind of important because he, as far as I know, is the all-time leader in passing yards for the European League of Football. You know what? No. He's number 2 now. Jacob Sullivan is number 1. But so for a while, he was the all-time leader in passing yards for the European League of Football, but now he's been past that. But he announced in February that he is stepping away from the game due to personal reasons. So we wish him well, right? Zach Edwards, very well known to anybody who's followed our YouTube channel and our show. We actually have one of his only pre-draft interviews right here on this YouTube channel, where he talked about facing adversity and things like that, coming from the College of St. Scholastica. And so we wish him well in his future endeavors. If he does decide to come back to the game, I'm going to be happy to see it because I've been rooting for Zach his entire career. that's one of the things I like about doing this hobby, job, whatever. We have guys at every level of football that we've gotten to interview, right? Zach Edwards, one of the greats in the European League of Football in its young tenure. Jamar Smith, he was on the first season of our show. He's one of the, well-known faces in the UFL, actually jumping in and leading the Birmingham Stallions, the reigning champions, to a victory this last week, coming off the bench and actually coming off basically off the street onto the bench after retiring from football and then into the game. And so that's great. And then finally, we got Michael Strawn at the pro level, still doing his best out there. So I love this job. We get to interact with guys that end up playing every level of football, and it's really great. DeAndre Torrey spent some time in the CFL, and it's really fun to do. And so if you wonder why I'm sitting in my kitchen talking about the European League of Football on a Sunday morning in Illinois, that's why, because I love doing this. This is fun. Let's get back to some of these games, though. All right. So, of course, let's see. The Panthers from Poland, the Rainfire, and the Madrid Bravos, along with the Storm, the Thunder, and the Ravens, all going to 1-0. And then 2 games still in progress. The Vienna Vikings traveling to Prague to take on the Lions. Last we looked, the Lions were getting fairly heavily dismantled, right, with some early offensive production by the Vienna Vikings. Let's see if that's still the case. Of course, we're waiting for the ticker to load up here because it takes a minute, and both of my kids are raiding the fridge at the moment. All right. We'll see if this loads up here in a minute. Instead, we'll try to head back to this Frankfurt Galaxy Stuttgart Surge game. So we were talking about the Stuttgart Surge Frankfurt Galaxy game. Last we checked, it was 14-6. And we said that the Frankfurt Galaxy have a chance to stay in this game if their rushing attack continues to produce. Otherwise, quarterback Riley Hennessy and the Stuttgart Surge. Riley Hennessy, one of the best players, one of the best offensive players in the league, right? Right up there with guys like Jacob Sullivan, Jadrian Clark, right? Formerly Zach Edwards. So it looks like it's still 14-6 here. And so the scoring has kind of stalled for a bit. I expect that we're about midway through the second quarter here. And, of course, eventually when we do this, we're not doing it for this week because, I don't want to get involved in all that just yet. It's kind of tiring to go through the social media accounts, get some highlights and things like that. I'll save that for hopefully when a few more people are watching than the 0 we have now. But yeah, so right now, Stuttgart Surge actually getting held a bit by this Frankfurt Galaxy defense. They're facing a 4th and 11 at their own 19 about midway through the second quarter. So this is looking good for the Galaxy. This is the formula for the Galaxy to stay in this game and eventually win if they can keep the rushing attack going and if they can hold that Stuttgart offense in check. That's going to be a big deal. So let's head back over to the other game here, Prague Lions and Vienna Vikings, to see if we can finally get this ticker to update. So at this moment, we won't put too much stock into it because the ticker's a little behind sometimes. We're about midway through the second quarter in this game as well. And the Vienna Vikings are leading 14-6, but that's better than the 14-0 it was, right? So the Prague Lions, it looks like facing a 2nd and 2 at their own 24, right? And let's just see what kind of chance they have at picking this up. They have a pretty decent rushing attack so far. Their running back is Zuzeka, 9 attempts, 50 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, and a touchdown. So that's pretty good. And, of course, they have do-it-all wide receiver Willie Patterson, who's pretty good as well. So just going to refresh this and see if they can pick this up real fast. See what we can do here. Okay, so they did not pick it up. It's a 3rd and 1 at the Prague 25. So now they're looking for a 1-yard conversion on third down here. Zuzeka stuffed on that last play. So we'll hop out of this. We'll go back to our other game, Galaxy at the Surge, see how that's going. Of course, this 4th and 11, according to the ticker, still hasn't been resolved. Let's see. Oh, it looks like a roughing the passer penalty on the Galaxy. If so, that would give the Surge a first down on 4th down. So I'm going to pause this for a second. I'm going to go get some coffee. And we're back with your ELF Sunday rundown. Just to recap, it's about 10:36 local time here, but we are well into the day over in Europe where these things are going on. So we've been running this live for about a half hour now, and we have no intentions of stopping. We used to get a few more viewers on Twitter. Used to get a couple hundred at a time watching these ELF live streams. I hope to get back to that, right? Maybe get a chance to promote it a little more, but unfortunately the Threads account just isn't quite working the same as the Twitter account did. But I don't think any amount of engagement is going to make me go back to Twitter. Just, a bit of a moral issue for me. But we are in the midst of some of these European League of Football games, and we are looking at a 2nd and 10 for the Surge. 3rd and 10 now, just updated. And if you were following us just a second ago, they had a 4th and 11 that they were going to try to convert, and the Frankfurt Galaxy were guilty of a roughing the passer that gave the Surge a first down on 4th down. So not great. Let's head out to this other game, the Vienna Vikings visiting the Prague Lions. Last we checked, this was 14-6. And the Lions had a 3rd and 1 to convert on their own 25. They failed on that, no yards, and they were faced with a 4th and 1. But according to the ticker there, Javarian Smith rushes up the middle, 3 yards. They convert that. First down, Prague Lions. This is really important for the Prague Lions to get some momentum going against the Vienna Vikings. Vienna Vikings clearly considered the superior team in this matchup. The Prague Lions really have had trouble finding their footing in the ELF here. But, they now have a 1st and 10 at their own 43 after a big play. 2-minute warning, so 2 minutes left before the half here. And they're wanting to drive down and score. They're wanting to even things up with the Vikings, right? They want to walk away from this with a win because not only would it be starting the season off 1-0, but it would be a huge win for a franchise that has seen their share of trouble over the years. Just to recap some of our earlier matchups, the Rowclaw Panthers took apart the Ferrovara Throners in Poland. The Rainfire traveled to Paris, beat the Musketeers by 2 points. The Musketeers without their starting quarterback from the past couple of years, Zach Edwards. The Rainfire without their starting quarterback for the past couple of years, Jadrian Clark. Zach Edwards stepping away from the game, Jadrian Clark moving to the new expansion, Nordic Storm, who we'll talk about in a second. The Bravos starting out 1-0 in Madrid with a 1-point victory over the Hamburg Sea Devils at home. The Nordic Storm traveled to the Helvetic Mercenaries and absolutely took them apart 56-12 through a 5-touchdown day from quarterback Jadrian Clark. And they got one of the best running backs in the league, Glenn Tuwanga, both from the Rainfire, if memory serves. The Cologne Centurions traveled to the Berlin Thunder and suffered an absolute drubbing, which you will see occasionally in this league, 14-63. Berlin Thunder walking out of there 1-0 after a huge victory. The Raiders to roll heading to the Munich Ravens. They fall 17-20 in a 13-point deficit on the back of a 14-point fourth quarter for the Ravens. And then we are back caught up with our two games here. Still 14-6 for the Lions and the Vikings as we near the end of the second quarter. Probably about a minute and a half left there. And then 14-6 for the Frankfurt Galaxy at the Stuttgart Surge. We said it was important for the Galaxy not only to contain the Stuttgart offense, but also to keep their rushing attack going because they have not been getting it done through the air so far. So this is your European League of Football action so far. 16 teams, right? 4 team divisions, right? I think this is a very well balanced format for the league, right? The 17, the 18 teams, that kind of got a little wonky at points when it came to standings, right? So I think 16 is a really good magic number here. So you can have 4 divisions of 4, right? It's basically a half of the NFL. And of course, it's not the same quality of the NFL, but it's a different product altogether. A lot more high scoring here. And as we said, there's multiple tiers, just like there is in the NFL. Some teams you're going to see get blown out, but other teams you're going to see some of the closest games of football, some of the most exciting games of football you've ever seen. And this league, I really like the UFL, right? But the UFL has a problem with fan engagement. This league does not. This league gets a ton of fan engagement. And of course, it's really hard to keep up with these leagues as an American when you live in America and you don't want to pay $100+ for a DAZN ELF pass. But luckily, we got you covered here every Sunday, if I can manage it, for some breakdowns of these European League football games. All right. So it looks like we're still sitting at 14-6. Of course, that's always a little dicey. The tickers on here need updating once in a while. And be sure to join us next week as well, because we'll actually have the team Twitter accounts on here. We'll be discussing some of the highlights and stuff like that. We'll be getting even more into these games. So while we wait to see how this 2nd and 6 for Prague turns out, let's just look at the box score so far. Javarian Smith, the quarterback, of course, 98 yards through the air, no touchdowns yet. He's taken a sack. But he's also been a decently effective rusher, right? Just 4 rushes, but 16 yards, a couple of first downs there. And then their running back, Zuzeka, 50 yards on the ground and a touchdown. They got wide receiver Willie Patterson, who you might remember was one of the better receivers in the league last year, averaging 17 yards per catch right now, 50 yards and no touchdowns. And then for the Vikings, they return their quarterback, Ben Holmes. He's right at about 50% in completion percentage, 112 yards to the air, 2 touchdowns, right? So a hot start, but slow sense. Not really much to go with on the ground, but their leading receiver, Mayer, which, you would expect Horn to be their leading receiver. He was their leading receiver last year, but Mayer is really the one getting it done today with 21 yards per catch. Let's see. And we have a 3rd and 6 for Prague at their 47 in the second quarter. They're hoping to pick this up. They're hoping to cross midfield, make a drive in as we head towards the half, right? Let's head back over to Stuttgart to see the Galaxy and the Surge, and we'll talk about some of those stats. Stuttgart Surge with one of the better quarterbacks in the league, Riley Hennessy, was absolutely lights out last year. So he's right at 60% so far, 86 yards, no touchdowns. And then on the ground, they got Oyewo, 55 yards, no touchdowns, but Riley Hennessy has scored both of their touchdowns on the ground. So 2 goal line touchdowns for him, right? As far as receiving, it's pretty spread out so far. Diamorim, 2 catches for 28 yards. Wegestruck, 1 catch for 27 yards, and then Cotton Jr. with 2 catches for 20 yards. So pretty evenly spread for that offense. Riley Hennessy is kind of known for spreading the wealth as a quarterback. Meanwhile, the Frankfurt Galaxy, led by their quarterback, McKay, 73 yards, no touchdown, but a very efficient performance with 10 completions on 12 attempts. Platzgummer, their running back, is getting it done on the ground, 41 yards, 7 yards per carry, and a rushing touchdown. Receiving, not so much, 38 yards, no touchdowns, and then a couple of tenors behind him. But I really wish they would update the sack stats here, but they're not, so that's fine. Still 14-6, and Frankfurt has the ball, but they are facing a 4th and 11. Their punter, Rappelt, punts for 59 yards, puts the Stuttgart Surge at their own 19-yard line. No return on that. Let's head back over to the other game to see what we got going on. So, of course, Vienna, Austria, heading over to the Czech Republic to face off against Prague. Still looking like a 2nd and 6 at the Prague 47. Sometimes it takes a while between plays in this league. I don't know if they have a longer play clock or what's exactly going on there, but of course, after you get done here, you always want to go to the social media accounts and watch some of these highlights because you just see the most insane highlights here. I mean, you think that there can't be high-quality football being played in Europe, and on some occasions you'd be right because some of this football just comes in way under the bar of what you would expect. But then other times it is absolutely lights out, a thrill to watch. And they get people in the stands, which is pretty crazy. There's a lot going into this league. They have really good broadcasters. Right. So the Vikings were backed up at their own 12-yard line. They're going to punt a short punt, just 36 yards to their own 48, no return. That's going to set up the Prague Lions in great field position to try to drive down and get a score to end this half. If they can get a score in a 2-point conversion, they can even this thing up before the half. But we'll see. Of course, just looking at the standings so far here, looking at the North Division standings, the Berlin Thunder, Nordic Storm, and Rainfire are all going to be tied atop the North Division at 1-0. The Hamburg Sea Devils are going to be at the bottom of that at 0-1. In the East Division, depending on the outcome of this game, right, either the Panthers and the Lions or the Panthers and the Vikings will be tied at the top of the East, 0-1, and the loser of this Prague Lions Vienna Vikings game will join the Färöer and Throners. At 1-0, and the loser of this Prague Lions Vienna Vikings game will join the Färöer and Throners at the bottom of the East at 0-1. But of course, standings don't mean too much at this point in the season. The Madrid Bravos and the Munich Ravens both walk away with a win this week to tie for the lead in the South Division at 1-0. The Helvetic Mercenaries and the Raiders Tyrol, they both sit at the bottom of the South in 0-1. Cologne got dismantled, and so they will start the year 0-1 at the bottom of the West. And then the Paris Musketeers will join them there at 0-1. So right now, the West Division has not won a game, but that streak will end at the end of this Frankfurt Galaxy Stuttgart Surge game because somebody has to win unless they tie. So the winner of Galaxy and Surge will take the lead in the West Division, while the other 3 teams will sit at 0-1. So, let's head back, see if we have an update on any of these games. Prague Lions driving 2nd and 5 at the Vikings 43, trying to drive in and score just before the half. but it looks like there is a penalty for an illegal block, so that's going to come back. They're actually going to be in worse position than they were. So they were at the 48 before. They're going to be backed up into their own territory with that 15-yard penalty. Let's head over to the other. 2nd and 20 for them. The Galaxy at the surge. So Galaxy, like the Lions, we're going to try to go down and tie this thing up before the end of the second here, before the half. But it looks like it's not going well. 3rd and 19 from their own 14. So really, really backed up. Matthew McKay is going to pass to the left of Paul Cavadia-Lenhart for 8 yards to the 22, but that's not going to get it done. That's still going to leave them with a 4th and 11. Not great. And so they're going to punt that back to the Stuttgart Surge, who would love to go in and get a score and kind of open this thing up before the half. But not starting out this drive well. They started out at their own 19-yard line, and Riley Hennessy tries to run it, loses a yard. Back to the 18. At this point, we might be seeing Stuttgart try to run out the clock here on the half to go into the locker room with the lead. Let's see. So we got some close games here early on, right? Closer than some of the other ones we've seen. This Vikings-Lions game is what really interests me because the Vikings just tromped out to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, and it really looked like they were going to run away with this against a team that has historically struggled. But the Prague Lions really putting on a defensive showing here in the second quarter, just absolutely blanking the Vikings. The Vikings haven't been able to do anything in this second quarter so far. Recapping some of those scores, it was the Panthers of Wrocław, Poland, dismantling the Ferencváros Throners 55-12. The Rain Fire traveled to Paris to take on the Musketeers and won against the Musketeers, the reigning champion Rain Fire, for 2 straight years, taking down the Musketeers 17-15, despite losing their quarterback and running back in the offseason. The Madrid Bravos staying at home against the Hamburg Sea Devils, who came into town and lost by 1 point. The Sea Devils, that has to be kind of a moral victory for them. They kind of tailed off over the end of the season last year. So to come in and take one of the better expansion teams to the wire, 12-13, that has to feel nice for them, even in a loss. But they're starting out 0-1. The expansion team Nordic Storm comes in to Switzerland and absolutely dismantles the Helvetic Mercenaries 56-12 behind a 5-touchdown day from reigning MVP Jadrian Clark and a big day on the ground from top running back Glenn Tawanga. The Cologne Centurions head to Berlin and get dismantled as well. 63-14 as the Berlin Thunder go to 1-0 off a huge 7-touchdown day by quarterback Jacob Sullivan, who is now the all-time leader in passing yards for the European League of Football, surpassing recently retired Paris Musketeers quarterback Zach Edwards of the College of St. Scholastica. The Raiders Tyrol traveled to Munich to take on the Ravens. Close game for most of it, but the Munich Ravens end up pulling away late in that, going to 1-0, and they end that 20-7. And of course, our games that we still have going on: the Vienna Vikings traveling to Prague, up 14-6 late in the second quarter, and the Frankfurt Galaxy traveling to Stuttgart to take on the Surge, also trailing by 8 points to late in the second quarter. So, looking back at this game, Prague Lions backed up here, 2nd and 20 at their own 42-yard line. Zavarian Smith drops it out to Adam Zuzeka, the running back, out of the backfield, and he ends up losing yards. So it's going to be 3rd and 25 after this. So the Prague Lions really, despite a good defensive performance, cannot get anything going offensively right now, and this is crushing any dreams they had of tying this thing up before the half. Let's head back over to Stuttgart. So it was a 3rd and 19 for the Frankfurt Galaxy at their own 14. And we said that Matthew McKay had that pass for 8 yards. It was going to make it 4th and 11. That still has not been resolved. So presumably 14 and 11, they're going to punt that bad boy away. Oh, actually, that had been resolved. The ticker's just not updated. That had been resolved. The Stuttgart Surge were running the ball with Riley Hennessy, and he had lost a yard there to make it 2nd and 11. So presumably we're getting pretty late in the second quarter here for the Surge and the Galaxy. The Frankfurt Galaxy would love to come away with a win against a solid Stuttgart team with a solid quarterback, and they would love to see it done on the back of their defense and rushing attack, because that means if McKay ever does get it together as a quarterback, they will have a very complete team, which they seemed like a very complete team last year. Despite losing a lot of games, they lost a lot of close games. So I just want to look at some of the teams here. Oops, if I can go back. Some of the teams in the ELF, right? Of course, the Rainfire were the defending champions under head coach Jim Tomsula. Oh, go back. This ridiculous thing. Sorry. Just looking at some of the teams here, right? Not all of these names you're going to recognize, but Jim Tomsula of the Rainfire you should absolutely recognize, because he has, of course, coached the Rainfire to 2 championships, but before that, he had 2 different stints as the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Coach John Shoup, who's coaching the new expansion team, the Nordic Storm. He has quite the career history as well, spent time with multiple NFL franchises as quarterbacks, coaches, and offensive coordinators. Most recently, he was an offensive coach with the Hamburg Sea Devils, and then the head coach of the Munich Ravens. Going back to 2013, he was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at Purdue. So a lot of experience there, right? Let's see. Bart Andrus coaching the Frankfurt Galaxy, trying to get that win there in Stuttgart. Quarterbacks coach for the Tennessee Titans, coached the Rainfire in the original iteration of NFL Europe, as well as the Amsterdam Admirals. Went to coach in the CFL for a year, got back into the NFL. Actually was the head coach of the Philadelphia Stars in the revival of the United States Football League before heading back to the ELF and coaching the Frankfurt Galaxy. Of course, going back here. Jack Del Rio, head coach of the Paris Musketeers, very well known as the former head coach of the Raiders that got let go in favor of John Gruden when they brought him in. Former defensive coordinator for the Washington football team, right? Well known around the league. And then an American coach who has made his way around Europe, right, as both a player for the Schwäbisch Hall Unicorns in Germany. Yep. And as the offensive coordinator for them as well, before becoming offensive coordinator of the Vienna Vikings and eventually the head coach of the Stuttgart Surge. That's Jordan Newman. The Madrid Bravos came in last year under head coach Andrew Wettinger. Used to be an offensive assistant with the Falcons, wide receivers coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then coached in the short-lived AAF, the Alliance of American Football, as the running backs coach of the Arizona Hotshots, before going back to coach the Potsdam Royals, who actually had a player who was trying to get drafted this year. That was fun. And then coming into the ELF as the head coach of the Barcelona Dragons, the offensive coordinator of the Rainfire during their championship run in 2024, and now the Madrid Bravos head coach. Jim Herman, you know, pretty well-known defensive guy. Um, the defensive coordinator for the San Antonio Brahmas of the XFL before taking over the Raiders to roll in 2024. Um, coached in was the defensive coordinator for the New York Guardians in the 2020 iteration of the XFL. Has had a couple of NFL and college coaching stops as well. So a lot of experience. I mean, just a ton of experience coaching wise in these leagues. And I haven't even named, half the coaches here yet. But I want to get back to the games here. I don't want to get too deep into extolling the virtues of this league at the expense of our live action here. So, waiting on the ticker to update in what was and probably still is a 14-6 game with the Vienna Vikings, the 2022 ELF champions, visiting the Prague Lions, who have really struggled to get their footing. But the Prague Lions with a strong defensive showing here. That's important, right? A blank second quarter following a 14-point first quarter for the Vikings. Prague manages to put 6 on the board, making it an 8-point deficit, and really hoping to get something going here in the second before halftime. But it's not looking great for them. 2nd and 20 at their own 42. And then, of course, we said it was going to be 3rd and 25 when we last checked on them, right at their own 37. So, not looking good so far. Back over to that Frankfurt Galaxy Stuttgart Surge game, similar story, right? You have the Stuttgart Surge with a really good offense playing against the Frankfurt Galaxy, who are hoping to ride the backs of their defense. And waiting on that ticker to update as well, because they're still sitting on the 3rd and 19, which is now, as we know, become a 4th and 11. So we're going to pause this for a second. I'm going to go get more coffee. I'll be right back. This is your ELF Sunday Rundown, live action from the European League of Football here on NFL Fan Blitz. And, of course, with me, your host, Matt Sparks, otherwise known as Arrowhead First on Threads. So, just all right, so back down to 0 viewers, and that's just fine because we are here all morning with European League of Football action right here in the United States. No, the action isn't taking place here, but the coverage of it is, right? From the beautiful corn-grown pastures of Illinois, I come to you live telling you about all the greatness of the European League of Football. If anybody's out there keeping up with spring leagues, there's plenty of options, right? If you're waiting for the NFL to start, don't wait. Just watch some football now. You have football at every level. You have the UFL, which is deep into its season right now. 2 teams have just been eliminated from playoff contention this past week. That would be my own Memphis Showboats. Very, very sad. And the San Antonio Brahmas, both eliminated from playoff contention. So, 6 teams still in the mix for the playoffs in the United Football League, which of course formed from the merger of the XFL and the USFL, coming together to make one mediocrely advertised football league that still puts on a quality product. If you're looking for even more football, there is the IFL, the Indoor Football League, which has been around for many, many years. That Arena League team that Kurt Warner famously played for, the Iowa Barnstormers, they're still there, and they're playing the IFL right now. And just multiple cities around the U.S. celebrating, including one about 2 hours from me, the Fishers Freight, who have come in as an expansion team this year. The IFL, a very solid indoor football league, right? Putting on live games, and they're a blast, right? And then, of course, what we're here talking about, the European League of Football, putting on live gridiron, 100-yard football at its finest. It's really, really great to watch. I hope you guys will join me every week because I love watching it. The CFL here in the next few weeks about to start kicking off, man. They're going to overlap the UFL by a week or so, but we're going to get heavily into that CFL coverage. We'll have power rankings, everything else. We're not doing power rankings from the UFL because you don't need that from us. You don't need that from me. There's Fox Sports, ESPN, everybody else is doing power rankings of that. You can get that elsewhere from more qualified analysts. We're here to get you the stuff you can't get anywhere else in the United States. And so that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. That's why I'm up on a Sunday morning talking European football with my Guyman FFA mug that I stole from somebody. All right. So it's not really like a big thieving moment, but all right. So we are at the half in the Frankfurt Galaxy and Stuttgart Surge game. The Frankfurt Galaxy traveling to Stuttgart to visit the Surge, and we are at the half. They are trailing 6-14. The Stuttgart Surge looking to go 1-0 against the Frankfurt Galaxy. Let's look at the box score here. So for the Stuttgart Surge, leading the charge here, Riley Hennessy, 6 attempts, 6 completions on 10 attempts for 86 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But Tyler Oyewo with 12 attempts for 59 yards, averaging almost 5 yards a carry. Again, no touchdowns rushing. But Riley Hennessy coming in on the ground, not through the air, with 4 rushes for 9 yards. Not great, but those 2 rushing touchdowns are really getting it done for him. Let's head over to the Frankfurt Galaxy. Quarterback McKay, 11 completions on 15 attempts, 77 yards through the air. Again, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but 2 sacks taken. On the ground, they have Platzgummer, who has 41 yards on the ground, 6.83 yards per carry, and a touchdown. Right? So both teams really struggling to find their footing offensively, but both teams getting it done on the ground. Let's head back to that other game, which I have reason to believe is also at halftime. The Vienna Vikings traveling to the Czech Republic to take on the Prague Lions. So if this game is not at halftime, it should be really, really close to halftime. The visiting Vienna Vikings, yes, trying saying that 5 times fast, the visiting Vienna Vikings, coming into the Czech Republic, and they are leading over the home team Prague Lions 14-6. The Vikings actually won this whole thing back in 2022. Well, the Prague Lions struggle to win a game from season to season, but it doesn't matter. This is one of the more well-branded leagues, or one of the more well-branded football leagues in the world. I mean, you look at some of these logos. These are, to me, not, your average IFL arena football logos or anything like that. No, these are good logos. These are teams with a lot of money behind them. So we are at halftime in these games. I'm going to come back as soon as we are out of halftime for these games. And so might be off here for a few minutes, but I'll come back and try to get you some breakdowns of our previous games after I take a short break. All right. And we're back with more coverage of the European League of Football. We took a brief moment off for halftime as I went and got some food and some coffee. Very exciting times we're living in. I always wonder. That's pretty cool. You can share a screen on YouTube Live. Like, had I but known that, I could have just been sharing a logo to you guys this whole time I was off. All right. So let's check in on some of this European League of Football action. All right. We are already into the third quarter for the Vikings at the Prague Lions. First and 10 on the Vikings 44. Of course, the Vikings looking to go 1-0 right now, leading the hometown Prague Lions in the Czech Republic 14-6 with a first and 10. Let's head back over to the other game we got. Very exciting. All right. The Frankfurt Galaxy at the Stuttgart Surge. I believe we saw that was already at halftime, but no telling. This ticker just is really hard to get updated. While we wait on the update there, I'll once again take you through some of the action from this weekend, and then we'll go through some of the standings. So, yep, okay. We are... It looks... Oh, so it looks like we're in the third quarter here, and it looks like the Frankfurt Galaxy had a big return from their own 2-yard line, taking that kickoff and returning it 41 yards. But unfortunately, they got hit with a delay of game immediately after. So since we last talked, the Stuttgart Surge did manage to drive down and score at the end of the half to make it 20-6. I take that back. They managed to score at the beginning of the third quarter to make it 20-6. And that return we just saw was Frankfurt coming back and trying to start their drive after the Stuttgart score. So we've said throughout this game, the formula here is for the Frankfurt Galaxy to keep their rushing attack going and to keep this Stuttgart Surge offense contained. Not going so well so far. Stuttgart is actually the one getting it done on the ground with 3 rushing touchdowns, despite not having that many rushing yards. So we'll see how that turns out. In the meantime, the Ferencváros Throners go to 0-1 as they go into Wrocław, Poland, and lose to the Panthers 12-55. The defending champion Rain Fire travel to Paris and take down the Musketeers 17-5. They were rivals last year. They were in the same division, but not anymore with a bit of the redivisioning here. Now they have 4 different conferences, divisions, whatever you want to call them. The Hamburg Sea Devils travel to Madrid to face the Bravos, and they lose by 1 point, 13-12. The new expansion team, Nordic Storm, with 2 of the best players in the league, quarterback Jadrian Clark and running back Glenn Tuwanga, travel to Switzerland and absolutely dismantle the Helvetic Mercenaries 56-12 on the back of a 5-touchdown day from Jadrian Clark. The Cologne Centurions go into Berlin and absolutely get handled 63-14 on the back of a 7-touchdown day from quarterback Jacob Sullivan, now the all-time leader in the ELF for passing yards. And then the Raiders Tyrol played a really close game against the Munich Ravens for the most part, but end up falling behind late, a 22-7 victory for the Ravens over the Raiders. The 2 games we have in progress right now is the Vienna Vikings visiting the Prague Lions in the Czech Republic. The Vienna Vikings are up 14-6 right now, and the Frankfurt Galaxy falling a little bit behind now to the Stuttgart Surge in Stuttgart. 22-6, Stuttgart leads. And so in this game, we have 3rd and 8 at the Galaxy 45. So that's not doing them any favors right now. They're getting a bit behind the chains there. Let's head over to the Vikings Prague game. I believe this is now into the third quarter and still 14-6 as much as I can tell. Let's look at some of the standings again. We did that just before halftime. We'll do that after halftime now too. The Thunder, the Storm, and the Fire are all going to be tied at the top of the North Division at 1-0, while the Hamburg Sea Devils, by virtue of their loss this week, are going to be at the bottom of the North Division 0-1. The Roclaw Panthers at the moment sit at the top of the East Division at 1-0. The Farivar Throners sit at the bottom of the division at 0-1. The loser of this Prague Lions game will join the Farivar Throners at 0-1 and at the bottom of the East Division, while the winner will join the Panthers Roclaw at the top of the division at 1-0. In the West Division, the Cologne Centurions are at the bottom at 1-0, and they'll be joined by the loser of this Frankfurt Galaxy Stuttgart Surge game, while they're already sitting there alongside the Paris Musketeers, who lost to the Rainfire this week. So Cologne and Paris sitting at the bottom at 0-1, and the loser of this Galaxy Surge game will join them at 0-1, while the winner of this Galaxy Surge game will take a one-game lead in the West at 1-0. This is, of course, week 1 of ELF action in the South Division. Not many surprises here, as the Madrid Bravos and the Munich Ravens both are tied atop the division at 1-0. The Helvetic Mercenaries sit at 0-1, and due to an unfortunate performance late, the Raiders Tyrol, who rode their running game last year and occasional high-flying passing games from their quarterback, they also sit at 0-1. So, your league leaders for each division. Right now, the West Division has no leader until this Galaxy Surge game is resolved. The Madrid Bravos and Munich Ravens lead the South. Actually, no. The Munich Ravens actually lead the South because the tiebreaker with the Bravos would be conference record, and they played the Raiders Tyrol. So your division leader in the South would be the Munich Ravens. The West has no division leader. But they will by the end of the day. And then the winner of this Lions-Vikings game will join the Panthers, tied with the lead in the East, while the let's see. So sorry. Just check in here for a minute. While the Storm, Fire, and Thunder all played non-division opponents, so they will all be tied at the top of the North at the end of the week here. Let's head forward and see what else we got. We got an email. That's always fun. All right. So, we're seeing a lot of similarities, actually, between this Vienna Vikings versus Prague Lions game and the Stuttgart Surge versus Frankfurt Galaxy game, right? The only thing is that in one game, the visitor is winning, which would be the Vienna Vikings. In the other game, the home team is winning, which would be the Stuttgart Surge. But both games sit at 20-6 right now in the third quarter. These in-game tickers are nonsense for the ELF website. They got to get this fixed. Of course, if you're not buying the DAZN ELF Game Pass for like $150, right? It's kind of hard to follow the action except to come in later and see it. But following football action after the fact is just not as fun, right? Being a standings watcher is not as fun. So you can always come here every Sunday that I'm available, and we're going to be talking ELF football. Next Sunday, it's going to be even better because we're going to have all the highlights and things like that. We're going to be going through the socials. Oh, it's going to be a hoot. Because I don't know if they do it in Europe, but next Sunday is Memorial Day weekend. And so I won't even have to go to work on that Monday. Very exciting. I think some of these spring leagues, just to get off topic here for a minute, I think some of these spring leagues, if they're going to be playing on Easter and Memorial Day weekend, well, by golly, they should be promoting these things like the NFL does Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? Like your Memorial Day Madness for the UFL, the United Football League, United by Football, whatever, So, I want to see, the development of these spring leagues. I want to see what they have in store. Huge fan. So, while we're waiting on some action here, let's go back and continue our study of some of these European League football teams. I just want the league itself. So, we got 16 teams. Those are the ones that we named to you in season, right? So, just going to their Wikipedia page here. 16 teams in 4 divisions across 10 countries. 7 teams in Germany, right? That would be the Sea Devils, the Thunder, the Fire, the Centurions, the Galaxy, the Surge, and the Ravens. 2 in Austria, which would be the Raiders Tyrol and the Vienna Vikings. 1 in the Czech Republic, which of course is the Lions. The French team is the Musketeers. The Hungarian team is the Enthroners. The Italian team, you know what? Did the Italian team go defunct? Oh, yeah. Milano. That's crazy. Milano is not in the league this year either. I mean, they didn't do so great last year, but Polish team and Roclaw, which does pretty well. The Helvetic Mercenaries, and then a shared team between Denmark and Sweden. This would be the newly minted team, the Nordic Storm. Way farther north. And there's, of course, been a redivisioning this year. So you had, teams from like Turkey and places like that join in. You had the Istanbul Rams, but they dropped out. Let's see. Oh yeah, the Leipzig Kings. The Leipzig Kings actually stopped play because they had some troubles during the 2023 season. That was a pretty big story in the ELF. Pretty big controversy for them, right? So your current teams, of course, the Berlin Thunder, who play in Berlin, the Hamburg Sea Devils, who play in Hamburg, the Nordic Storm, who play in Copenhagen, I think. Yep, in Copenhagen. And then the Rainfire, who play in the Rhineland, right? I guess, is it the Rhinefire? Because it's the Rhineland, But you have the Cologne Centurion, and that's the North Division. You have the Cologne Centurions, the Frankfurt Galaxy, the Paris Musketeers, and the Stuttgart Surge, who all play in the West Division. And so it kind of sounds weird when you're thinking like, oh, well, 3 of our German teams are in the North Division, 3 of our German teams are in the West Division, and 1 is in the South Division. But if you really look at the European map, it makes sense, right? The Helvetic Mercenaries, who play in Zurich, Madrid Bravos, of course, play in Madrid. Munich Raiders play near Munich, but not in Munich. And the Raiders Tyrol play in Innsbruck, Austria. And then you have the Enthroners that play in first field in Hungary in Fehérvár in central Hungary, right? The Prague Lions, who play in Prague, Vienna Vikings, and the Wrocław Panthers, right? And then you have the former teams. The Istanbul Rams from Hungary joined from the Hungarian Football League, or the Turkish League, sorry, for just one season, right? And they left in December of 2022, going back to the Turkish League. The Leipzig Kings struggled in the UFL and didn't do very well. So they were replaced by, they withdrew from the league in the middle of the season. The Helvetic Guards were replaced by the Helvetic Mercenaries. It's essentially the same team, not quite though. And then the Barcelona Dragons dropped out very recently in December of 2024. The Milano Seamen plan to rejoin the league as the 17th team next year, but they put the team on hiatus for 2025. So let's jump back into the action here, now that you know everything there is to know. And we have scoring updates. So, as we said, the Frankfurt Galaxy looking to make waves, and you can hear them playing with their four-wheeler outside. Yeah, I live in an apartment complex. Very great. So sorry. So we have a scoring update. The score is now 27-6. The hometown Stuttgart Surge up 27-6, up 21 points over the Frankfurt Galaxy at home. Riley Hennessy now is officially on the board with a passing touchdown, 160 yards through the air, one touchdown through the air, and of course those two touchdowns on the ground, while Oweyo is up to 90 yards on the ground. These receiving yards are really starting to balance out. Cotton Jr., 55 yards and a touchdown. Pedro, the wide receiver Pedro, 29 yards, no touchdowns. Diamorim, 28 yards, no touchdowns. And Wegestruck, 27 yards and no touchdowns. And then finally, Geyer rounds out the group with 21 yards and no touchdowns. But you can see this is a very balanced passing attack. Hennessy has completions to at least 5 different receivers here, right, for 10 yards or more. So that's pretty great. That's how you win, is to spread the ball around. Meanwhile, McKay has now taken 2 sacks, still at 77 yards through the air. Platzgummer still at 46 yards and a touchdown on the ground. McKay, the second leading rusher, with 23 yards on the ground. Leading receiver is Cavadia Linhart, who also had the big return, 38 yards, 0 touchdowns. And so this game is starting to get a little bit out of hand for the Frankfurt Galaxy, but we'll see what happens. Of course, the Vikings finally made that extra point, go up to 21-6 over the hometown of Prague Lions, who would really like to get a win out of this against a very strong Vikings team, who, despite not winning the league since 2022, have maintained a strong presence in the ELF and are considered one of the better teams. Let's look at the stats from this game if we can. Holmes, of course, with 2 passing touchdowns, maybe 3 now. Oh, let's see. Okay, so Holmes for the Vikings, 2 passing touchdowns, just 1 sack taken, 203 yards through the air. I'm going to take a stab at this name. Pajarinen. I don't know. Pajarinen. Not doing so well on the ground, averaging just 3.36 yards per carry, but he does have that rushing touchdown, so that's important. And then you have Mayer coming out strong. We talked about the receiving yards were really balanced for the Stuttgart Surge. They're really not well balanced for the Vienna Vikings, but that's because Mayer has been taking all the role in the receiving game, and so 130 yards to the air, almost 22 yards per catch. No touchdowns, right? But you do have Torre and Horn both with a touchdown apiece. So our games here looking like they might get out of hand pretty quick because, of course, the Vienna Vikings with the ball leading 21-6 in the third quarter. They already have the ball back. the Stuttgart Surge leading 27-6, and it looks like they might have the ball back already. So we're going to take a brief break. I'm going to go get some more coffee and forgot to get my coffee. So we're back, and what you're watching might be the greatest live European League of Football rundown show in the style of NFL Red Zone. It might be the best one that exists in America because it might be the only one that exists in America. So it's good to be the best at something. If I'm not the best, somebody jump in and let me know, right? If I'm not the best at this particular thing. If somebody else is doing it better, we need to talk. All right. So, super exciting stuff. We have the Frankfurt Galaxy taking on the Stuttgart Surge in Stuttgart. 21-point lead there for the Stuttgart Surge over the Frankfurt Galaxy. Elsewhere, we have the Vienna Vikings traveling to a very hopeful Prague Lions team, hoping this season would be a little bit better for them, but not going so well so far. So, you know, 21-6 lead for the Vikings there. Yeah. Let's see. Just doing something real quick here. All right, we're back. And waiting for some downloads to occur here. Heading back over to that Vienna Vikings Prague Lions game. That still sits at 21-6. The Vienna Vikings looking to take the lead in their division there, while the Surge are in Stuttgart looking to take the lead in their division as well, and they got a really good chance at it with a 21-point lead here about midway through the third quarter or so. So, very exciting stuff. We're getting back to the action as soon as possible here on your ELF Sunday Rundown from NFL Fan Blitz, the Fan Blitz Network, and of course myself, Matt Sparks from Arrowhead First. So very exciting. We've been on the air for an hour and a half now, and I have still not lost steam. And why would I? We got excellent football action here that we get the privilege of covering live. So, just looking here to see what I got. Pull that up. Awesome. All right. So we're going to minimize that for the moment. And we're going to test this out. Okay. So all right, so that works. That's awesome. Yeah, just really getting a feel for things in our first little live stream of the year here. Live streaming on YouTube is kind of new to me, so you guys will learn as I learn, I guess, because I've never done this on YouTube before, and so it's luckily I'm doing it when nobody's watching. We used to have a pretty decent following for this show on Twitter. Back before that went all crazy. And so last year when we did this, we had a decent following. We'd get up to a few hundred people watching sometimes. And so that's really, really fun for me, right? Because I just get to sit here and break down football for y'all. And I'd love to see some people join in the chat when it's time, things like that. Leave a comment on the video, whether it's awesome, whether it sucks. Don't tell me it sucks. All right. Because I'm going to be undeterred anyways. But yeah, leave some anything on the video. And we're just running down ELF, and we'd love to get some people watching, but if not, I'm still going to be here and you can look it up later. So this is something I really love to do. Of course, like I said, the YouTube thing is a little new for me because I've never live streamed on YouTube before, but it seems easy enough, seems user friendly enough. Just go to this little thing and click it when I have to do a commercial break. And I say commercial, not even a commercial, because we don't show commercials because we are not paid to advertise here. I'm just sitting here running down live football for y'all and trying to make it look as legitimate as possible. So let's go through it one more time. All right. So The Ferevar Enthroners of Hungary traveled to Poland to beat the Wrocław Panthers in the European League of Football, and they ended up getting down really bad, 55-12, doing absolutely terrible. And that stinks for them because the Enthroners are a team with really good branding that struggled to find their footing last year. So we'll see if they can pick up the pace this year, but starting out at 0-1 after a crushing loss in Poland to the Wrocław Panthers, who start out 1-0. The defending champions, the two-time defending champion, Rain Fire, traveled to Paris to take on the Paris Musketeers. Both of these teams last year had two of the best quarterbacks in the European League of Football. Now both of them have changed quarterbacks. Quarterback Jadrian Clark moved on to the expansion team Nordic Storm, who play in Copenhagen, Denmark. And Zach Edwards of the Paris Musketeers, who at one time was the all-time passing yards leader for the European League of Football. He has stepped away from the game temporarily due to personal reasons. We wish them both the best in their future endeavors. But the Rainfire come in and get a close victory, 2 points on the back of quarterback Jeffries, who also is a very experienced quarterback in the ELF. And they go 17-15. They're two stout teams playing against each other. The Hamburg Sea Devils travel to Madrid. They end up 0-1 as Madrid takes that win at home in Spain. 13-12. The Madrid Bravos lead their division as they go to 1-0. The Nordic Storm, you never know really what to expect from an expansion team, but they come out swinging on the road for their first game in Switzerland at the Helvetic Mercenaries, and they win against the Helvetic Mercenaries 56-12. Again, we've said it. 5-touchdown day from quarterback Jadrian Clark, the reigning MVP, the former quarterback of the Rain Fire, and big day by Glenn Tawanga, one of the best running backs in the league last year, looking to continue that this year as we go into 2025. The Cologne Centurions were looking for a victory in week 1 as they traveled to Berlin. That was not to be had, as in what has become characteristic of some of these games. We saw quite the blowout, 63-14 in favor of the Berlin Thunder on the back of a 7-touchdown day by a man who is very well known in Berlin, and that is Jacob Sullivan, who had 7 passing touchdowns through the air. The Munich Ravens took down the Tyrol Raiders at home 20-7, and we still got 2 games in progress here. We got the Vienna Vikings visiting the Prague Lions. That game getting increasingly out of hand as the Vikings are now up 28-6, and it looks like quite possibly another passing touchdown by quarterback Ben Holmes, who is looking to have a monster day on par with other quarterbacks like Jadrian Clark and Jacob Sullivan, and even Riley Hennessy, who is making his mark here in this game as the Frankfurt Galaxy visiting the Stuttgart Surge. Stuttgart up by 21 points right now. Riley Hennessy with 3 total touchdowns, 2 on the ground and 1 through the air. So let's take a look at that Vikings-Lions game, and let's see how that went down. Looking at the box score here, because it's really hard to kind of follow these games, you know. Sorry, it's really hard to follow these games sometimes because the tickers don't update very well. There's not really a good way to watch them in the United States, so we just kind of had to sit here and wait on the grace of the good Lord of tickers. And let's see, we are into the 4th quarter in this game. Ben Holmes with 237 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 18 of 30 passing so far. But Pajarina, the lead running back there, 70 yards, averaging nearly 5 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So big offensive day from the Vienna Vikings as they are starting to pull away from the Prague Lions, who put on a good defensive effort through the second quarter, but ultimately just can't hold on to that as the Vikings now have a touchdown in each of the last 2 quarters, the 3rd and the 4th, and they're looking to run away with this game. Right now, I want to reiterate, there are blowouts, just like there are in any league, but a lot of these games are really close. This Munich Ravens Tyrrell Raiders game, it was very close, like right up until the end. If we look at the score here, right, um, it was a 6-7 game with the Raiders leading an excellent defensive effort all the way up until the fourth quarter when the Ravens put up 14. In this, of course, the Rain Fire versus the Paris Musketeers. The Musketeers, a semifinalist team last year, the Rain Fire, the reigning champions. This game, 2 points was the margin here. Hamburg at Madrid, 1 point the margin, and it came down to a field goal in the fourth quarter, right? So throughout the game, going into the fourth quarter, the Hamburg Sea Devils were actually leading 12-10 heading into the fourth quarter, and Madrid came in with the field goal, managed to take the lead and win it, right? So an excellent defensive effort there in a league where you see a ton of scoring, right? And so this league has something for everybody. If you want close games, it's got those. You got to watch the right games. If you want a lot of scoring, it's got that too. We just saw Jadrian Clark of the Nordic Storm and Jadrian Clark of the Nordic Storm and Jacob Sullivan of the Berlin Thunder combined for 12 passing touchdowns this week, right? The Nordic Storm, new expansion team, you don't know what to expect from them. They had 8 offensive touchdowns today. It's huge, 56-12, guys. All right, so some of these games come right down to the wire. Others are big, high-flying, high-scoring games, but ultimately, what you end up with in the European League of Football is a mixed bag, just like you get from other leagues here. So very exciting stuff. We still have these 2 games in progress, but unfortunately, neither one of these games super close. The Vienna Vikings visiting Prague, and they are way up on the Lions here, a 22-point deficit for the Lions to try to overcome at home. Just looking at the stats here, right, the Lions really haven't been able to get anything going through the air. Javarian Smith hasn't had a bad passing day, but hasn't had a good one either. 124 yards through the air, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 sacks taken. That's the difference here. They've gotten a pretty decent day out of running back Zuzeka, 87 yards on the ground, a touchdown, averaging nearly 5 yards a carry, but it's just not enough. And you expect them to get going eventually, right? Willie Patterson, who's probably going to be their lead receiver throughout the year, he has 4 catches for 50 yards. But again, they need to start converting some of these into points. Meanwhile, the Vienna Vikings are running a very balanced offense, 2 passing touchdowns from Holmes, 2 rushing touchdowns from Pajarnin. You have 130 receiving yards from Mayer, and this is a very balanced Vikings team, and this lets you know why they are winning. Just going back through some of the standings, right? In the East Division, the Panthers Roklaw are at the top, and they're going to be joined by the winner of this Vienna Vikings and Prague Lions game, which is more and more looking like it's going to be the Vikings and the Panthers at the top of the East. The Lions and the Enthroners sitting at the bottom of the East at 0-1. In the North Division, the Thunder, the Storm, and the Rain Fire, this is looking to be one of the better divisions in the ELF as they are all tied at 1-0, and the Sea Devils, off a close loss, come in at 0-1. In the South Division, the Madrid Bravos and the Munich Ravens are going to be at the top of the division, while the Mercenaries and the Raiders are going to be at the bottom at 0-1. And finally, it looks like the Stuttgart Surge are going to pull away and win this here, so they will be the leader in the West Division. Everybody else in the West will be sitting at 0-1, but this is the kind of thing that happens in Week 1. There's a lot more football to be played, and it's very, very exciting stuff. I'm going to be here every Sunday that I can be to watch this, so it's going to be really fun. Let's head back and see what we got. Oh, Stuttgart Surge scored again. All right, so Stuttgart now up 30-6 over the Frankfurt Galaxy. And as these teams begin to establish their identity a little bit, we're going to see more like who is in that top tier of teams, who's in that middle tier, and who is in the bottom tier. Generally, just speaking from what we've seen over the past couple of years, right? The Rainfire, the Berlin Thunder, and the Vienna Vikings, maybe the Madrid Bravos. Those are going to be your top tier of teams, right? Your middle tier is going to be borderline Paris on that top tier, but like Paris, Tyrol, Munich, Wroclaw, right? And then the Nordic Storm look like they're going to be in that top tier too. And probably Hamburg is going to be in that middle tier. And then your bottom tier is going to be teams like the Helvetic Mercenaries, looking like the Cologne Centurions. The Barcelona Dragons would have been there, but they stopped out for this year. The Prague Lions and possibly the Frankfurt Galaxy. I like rooting for the Frankfurt Galaxy. I really hope they get this going here, but it's not looking good after 1 week. All right. So we've been on here for about an hour and 50 minutes now. These games are getting out of hand. So I'm going to dip out. Right. We're going to go off the air. We're going to assume that the Stuttgart Surge is going to beat the Frankfurt Galaxy. We're going to assume that the Vienna Vikings are going to continue beating the Prague Lions. And so your division leaders one more time will be in the East, the Panthers, Wroclaw, and Vienna Vikings sitting at 1-0. In the North, the Berlin Thunder, the Nordic Storm, and the Rainfire all sitting at 1-0. In the South, you're going to have the Madrid Bravos and Munich Ravens sitting at 1-0. And in the West, you're going to have Stuttgart sitting at 1-0, while all the other teams in the West sit at 0-1. Those are your division leaders for the European League of Football. If something changes, you'll be able to find it on our socials page. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody who joined us, and be sure to join us next week if you want, and every week from here on out, because every Sunday that I can be here, I'm going to be here breaking down the European League of Football. It's more than just fun for me, right? I have a great time doing it. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to drink coffee right here in this spot on this computer, breaking down the European League of Football for you. The further we get into this, the more streamlined it's going to get, right? We'll have highlights and things like that, commentaries from the team's social pages and stuff like that. So thank you for watching. I've been your host, Matt Sparks of Arrowhead First, a division of the Fan Blitz Network, and please join us next Sunday for your European League of Football live Sunday rundown.